Starting off with the big news with number one overall Tennessee getting the big upset from Notre Dame in the Knoxville Super Regional at home for Tennessee. Just shocking fashion in the second straight year where the number one overall seed that pretty much dominated the entire year throughout the country and in the SEC especially goes down to in the Super Regionals to an ACC opponent. This year it being Tennessee, and just being very much resembling what happened last year with Arkansas, kind of seeing that those similarities between the setup that we saw in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we said it earlier in the year. The talent was never the question for this Tennessee team, but the issue was rather where their motivation was directed or if their antics would be an issue. Personally, the way I see it is that baseball is trending in the direction where players bat flip every single home run and wear cowboy hats or masks coming back into the dugout, and pitchers sheath their sword or scream in celebration after a big strikeout. And I absolutely love that. I think it's what makes baseball fun, and that energy is what makes college baseball so special and college sports in general. There's an energy surrounding college sports that you just don't find on the professional level, and it's because players care more about the team's success than their own. But I think players have every right to celebrate their success. They give countless hours of hard work and they sacrifice many things in order to succeed in those situations. But there's really a difference between celebrating your success and trying to downgrade your opponents any given chance. And I will say, most teams throughout the year are going to have games where they're a little chippy or hostile, usually against rivals or just high intensity opponents. But it seems like with this Tennessee team this year, that it was just every game there was some sort of ordeal. And you got players flipping off other players while running the bases or cussing out a pitcher after you hit a single. I mean, there's certainly a gray line between what's okay and what's not, but I think most college baseball fans across the country would tell you that Tennessee consistently crossed the line this season, and most of them were happy to see them fall short.
Yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of people were happy to see them get knocked out before making the College World Series. I agree with you that they definitely push the line sometimes with their antics, and but they're always the main talking point of college baseball this season, especially. So whether or not you think that behavior they exhibited was bad for the sport, it brings eyes, and that's for sure. And with them being out of the College World Series, there's definitely not going to be as many people tuning in just to see or hopefully see Tennessee lose like so many people would. But yeah, it's tough to know exactly kind of what direction to go from Tennessee, and there is that camaraderie that you see a lot in college sports in general, and specifically here in college baseball that you don't see in professionals, where it's kind of a do it for yourself kind of mentality, and that college sports is what brings the fun out, and that's why people like it, and seeing it kind of being pushed to the next level with Tennessee is interesting to see. It's a good judgment call for a lot of people, and for the most part, Tennessee was there as the evil guys this year, and that was a good thing for many reasons, with a lot of people showing their best games because they're playing Tennessee or something like that. They know they have to be at their best to be able to compete and not to just get shown up by this Tennessee team. But yeah, there are a lot of good things that come from Tennessee being the way they were as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think in the end, Tennessee was great for college baseball this season just due to the immense talent on that team and the energy they did play with. I think just moving forward, people would like to see them channel their energy in a slightly more respective way towards their opponents and umpires and people like that. But regardless, I think Tennessee will continue to be in the national conversation for years to come. Vitello's a great coach and excellent recruiter, no matter what antics go on there. And so, yeah, they're certainly a great team, but they fell short in this series. We actually had this one nailed pretty well. We stated Notre Dame had to win the first game to win this series because you're just not going to win two in a row against Tennessee. and they just did just that in game one. All 8 of their runs were off home runs. They were just mashing the ball. And then in the process, Drew Gilbert gets tossed for cussing out the umpire on a borderline call. They also lose their pitching coach, and he gets suspended 3 games while Drew Gilbert was only suspended 1. And then Tennessee bounces back in that Saturday game, wins 12-4. Then on Sunday, Notre Dame locked it up, coming from behind and scoring 6 straight runs to take down the Vols in front of that hostile crowd. Yeah, just one of the biggest upsets of all time over a number 1 seed. And Tennessee now enters the conversation with 2021 Arkansas and 2017 Oregon State as some of the most talented teams and successful regular season teams that just couldn't get it done in the postseason in recent history.
Yeah, and like you said, with the first game that Notre Dame played, they really jumped on Tennessee early, which I think was absolutely huge. You want to kill that kind of momentum as quickly as possible with this Tennessee team. And if they're down, sure they can come back, but you never like to see that scoreboard read like 8-2 like it was after 4 innings for them, and for them to get ahead and do it in a exciting fashion with all those home runs like you mentioned. It was a great way to grab game one, and even though they didn't even pitch their ace, they put him to game two, which didn't work apparently, but we thought things would end up a little differently based off of that alone. But they got game one, and then game three was a real dogfight for the most part, where Tennessee just wasn't able to extend their lead early on, and that was huge for the Notre Dame pitching staff. Especially impressive was Jack Finley coming out of the pen and tossing 5 scoreless frames for Notre Dame, just to be able to stay in that game. And at some point, they're going to get a chance. Maybe they won't capitalize, but they were able to do it twice in game three and able to take the series. And especially those last few innings, being able to be up by a decent margin just killed off Tennessee once again, where when you see that crooked number, it's tough to come back from that.
Yeah, and now with heading into Omaha, there's not really a set team that's the favorite heading into this, but you have to think that Notre Dame is one of the most dangerous teams headed in there. Coming off a series win over the undisputed number 1 team in the country. I mean, they just have to have all the confidence in the world. They're an old team, so you got to think they're probably going to be mature about it, not get too far ahead of themselves. Yeah, they're looking good heading into Omaha.
Yeah, and they have good postseason experience as well with a lot of these guys playing in the team last year, and just kind of knowing what to do in these situations is always good. But we can jump to the other side, the team that they will be facing in the College World Series, coming from the Greensville Super Regional. Number 9 seed Texas beats 8 seed East Carolina in what was a pretty good matchup for the most part. First games were very good. The jungle was rocking, but game 3 was just kind of a different story. The combination of the lightning delays and the hot start by Texas pretty much just killed the crowd, and the momentum of East Carolina kind of went with that. So they had the crowd throughout the postseason, but just like that, when the weather hits and you have to evacuate and all that kind of stuff, it kills the vibe a bit. And coming back 6 hours later after you started drinking at the very beginning of the game isn't gonna be you're gonna be feeling it at that point, and it's gonna be tough to keep that energy up for the fans.
Yeah, this weekend was just absolute heartbreak for East Carolina. They win that first game, and then they're up 7-2 in the 7th of game 2, but they just couldn't hang on. Texas comes storming back to walk off that game, and then, like you said, they just dogged East Carolina in that Sunday matchup, even after the rain delay. I mean, honestly, impressive stuff from the East Carolina crowd. They actually showed out even after that 6-hour delay. They still had it pretty packed, and it was loud. So hats off to that crowd and that atmosphere there. And honestly, I don't think East Carolina has anything to be ashamed of. Nobody expected them to be here. They were like 14-13, I believe, at one point this season. And they just go on an insane stretch down the year. They didn't have their number 1 pitcher, who's going to be a first round draft pick. And somehow they're able to work their way all the way to a national seed and host a super regional. I mean, just impressive stuff from that program. They don't quite yet get that Omaha appearance they're waiting for, but it was still a great season for them.
Yeah, they're just always on the cusp, it seems, and they just haven't got that one drop of water to put them over the edge. But they're so close. Like every single year, it feels like they're almost there and just can't get it done. And they came up against a really tough Texas team that feel like when you see them in a super regional, you're not very happy about that. They've got stud players all over the place, starting with Ivan Melendez, who now broke the record for most home runs in a season in the BB Core era, and now has a chance to break the 100 RBI threshold during the College World Series. I believe he's like 6 short at this point. So when you're coming up against these studs, and the Texas defense is very, very good, probably the best in the nation, at least that's what their fielding percentage says, and they've got some very good defensive players as well. It's going to be tough to beat them even if you're at home.
Yeah, I mean, you got Ivan Melendez leading the way, like you said, and Texas is starting to kind of look like that consensus number one overall team they were, that we expected them to be heading into this season. They're just clicking on all cylinders right now, playing well. For them to come back and win that series, even after dropping the opening game, was very impressive. And I'm looking forward to that matchup, watching them play against Notre Dame, two teams that are hot and probably have all the confidence in the world right now. For Ivan Melendez, I'm curious to see where his furthest home run will land in Omaha. Should be great to see.
Yeah, should be great watch. That first game is going to be very good between Notre Dame and Texas. With feels like all these teams just being able to show up at the right time. None of these teams you necessarily would have thought would be in Omaha, but at the same time, they're all teams that you could definitely see there. So just off of these two alone, definitely a good start to where things will be headed. Thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed, we would really appreciate a like and subscribe for more weekly college baseball content.